Since I can't see who all you are and being challenged mentally due to my advanced age, I can't remember all of you, but Dale I've traveled with, Tonga most recently, and to Mexico. In fact, Dale took me to Mexico the first time. So I want to start out by saying thanks to y'all, and hope you go to other places as well. What you're looking at right now is the logo. First of all, in the upper right hand corner, the Canadian maple leaf and the star from U.S. or Texas or wherever it's from. I don't know who designed that logo, but I know my wife Millie, who is KC5UTP, did the color work on TX7T, so you can see it. Robert, maybe you did, or maybe it was Bob Alphin. I don't remember who did that. Give me some information there, would you?
I don't remember. I think we farmed it out. What's one of those internet services where you can get somebody to write a little piece of code for you or develop a graphic? I think that's what we did.
Okay, well, the history of the Can-Am DX group, which is what we call ourselves nowadays, goes back to at least 2003, where Neil King, VA7DX, and Dave Anderson, K4SV, and I all went to Lesotho with Frosty, who is a longtime TDXSer until he died, and I don't remember when that was, but anyway, that's where it all began. And we hit the next one, Roby, please. Still looking. There it is. Anyway, we've collectively been on about 15 DXpeditions of one sort, and our rules are pretty simple. We like to go to places that are well regarded, which means they want to be wanted, preferably in the top 100, and sometimes a lot better. And we like to have fun. This last one was a real, the Hiva Oa Marquesas DXpedition was a real hardworking one, which is different from most of them. When I ran into Bob Alphin one time, says, you know, Bob, you ought to go with us. He says, well, what do you do? Because I knew he was burned out on these big ones. And I said, well, you get together and you find out to go someplace where you don't have to take the Braveheart, and you know, you put up some antennas and have a good time. And he says, no, what do you really do? And I says, that's what we really do. And that's what we've done all of these times, including this one. Although Bob, and to a lesser extent, Robert in this last one, decided that having 3-hour shifts was the way to be it. And so we did. I'll tell you what, it was a lot more work than we did, but than we do on those other ones. But at least we made we made 30,000 Qs, which is Bob Alphin's definition of a good time. Anyway, that's what we do. Next slide. Those are the people that went the last time. And I think with the exception of Didier, our Frenchman, who was a real asset on this one, we've all traveled together at one time or another. We were all together the second Australs trip, which was in 2018, and we've all traveled with one or another of us all along. Next slide. Okay, we selected November because it was a good time to go. The best thing about this is it was tropical cyclone season has not started. And I'll tell you what, until you've lived through one of those, and we have, you do not want to be involved in tropical cyclones out in the Pacific. They make what breezes through Houston every so often. It seemed like small potatoes. When we were, I don't remember how far from the tropical cyclone Winston when we went to Tonga, and our winds were only 65 knots. But as a result, really, well, I guess we had what, 2 hex beams, Dale? I don't remember now. On the air, on top of a plastic picnic table. We still managed to work into Western Europe, so that was pretty good. But we decided that we were going to go and starting in late October, go to Tahiti itself, operate there for a while, then move on to the Marquesas, and then go from there. Now, Robert, being a diver, decided he was going to stay on an extra week. So, Robert, give a few words on that.
Yeah, I went to a tiny little coral atoll called Fakarava that's known for its shark diving, and it was a lot of fun, adventurous diving to be sure, big currents and things, but it was fun. I had a pretty limited station. I'd hoped to be closer to the beach, but I got on and made a few hundred contacts and had a good time with it.
Well, prior to that, we had set up in a very, very nice place in Tahiti itself and made a lot of contacts. I don't remember how many, but we got a lot of cards. I wouldn't think that's too rare, but people wanted us, especially on 160. The unique thing about that is that we had a vertical antenna there, which was pretty much designed by Robert. So Robert, tell them what you did.
I made a really simple trap dipole that did 10, 15, 20, and 40 with some coax straps. And it had 4 radials, and you could, they were jumpered, so you could set them for 10 and 15, or 15 and 20, or 20 and 40. So that worked pretty well. In addition to that, we took out one of our big spider poles and somehow lashed together antennas for 80 one night and 160 another night. And if anybody's ever interested in a really easy de-expedition, I think you could go to Tahiti and operate the low bands and make a whole bunch of people happy. So Tahiti's easy to get to and a nice place to visit.
Okay, one more, Robbie. What do you got? Okay, French Polynesia is an interesting place. Well, France is pretty interesting altogether. Polynesia, which is of course thousands of miles away from France, is considered France, as is every French possession. And Polynesia itself is pretty big, although mostly what you see in the background of this slide is what is consisting of French Polynesia, which is water. The Australs is the southernmost group, and the Marquesas is the northernmost, unless you want to figure on what's that? Heck, I can't remember. There's another little island out there which may or may not be French. Clipperton, I guess it is. But at any rate, from Marquesas down to the Australs is almost as big as the lower 48 is in miles. It's about 2,500 miles from one end to the other. It's a 9-hour flight from Los Angeles, and you get in there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you look out your window, because you know you have to, they turn the lights on, and the view will knock off your socks, I guarantee you that. It is a spectacular place. But Polynesia itself isn't just Tahiti, it's all kinds of stuff there. There are 5 island groups, including 3 DXCC entities. Next slide. Well, that's where it is. And you see Los Angeles up there in the upper right-hand corner. And to put things in perspective, I guess it's about halfway to Tahiti, which is where the flights go, is about halfway between the U.S. and Australia. The Marquesas is back up the other way. It's what, 1,200, 1,500 miles from Papeete, Tahiti. So you go to Papeete, then hop on a flight. It's an ATR, 72 passengers, I think. And then you fly back over a whole bunch of water. At any rate, there it is. It's still on this side of the date line, so things are going on there at the same time today. They're, I think it's 5 hours off of our time. Next one.
5.5, Madison. This is one of the crazy places that decides that they have to be super accurate and put a half an hour in there. We basically ignored that and worked on UTC, except for meal times and when it was time to leave.
Well, yes, except I don't know. I never could quite get into the half-hour time zone with meals coming on local time and the other stuff working on UTC. Anyway, Polynesia is, well, you can see a bunch of islands in there. The Marquesas are in the upper right, and Hiva Oa is a small island. I forget where the capital is over there. It's sort of, well, it's sort of independent, which means that, and you wonder about that. Hiva Oa had a population of about 1,500. The Austral Island where we went down to Reedave in the lower left has about 500, and of course they don't have any money. So what they do is they send the bill to Paris and get what they can. There are no schools other than grammar schools in any of those islands. They send all their high school kids to Tahiti to go to school, and they're dependent upon France for all this stuff. So all the good and bad of France comes to Polynesia as well. One of the times, Bob Elfin, K4UEE, was flying on Air France, and I think he had to stay an extra 2 days because they were on the air. Well, there was some sort of general strike. The rest of us were traveling on U.S. carriers, so we managed to make it back all right. There are lots of folks in Tahiti. Nearly 70% of the population is part of it. And it says there are 181 islands. I don't believe that. I think there are more than that, but some of them are just tiny, kind of like Scarborough. But at any rate, they somehow make it all work. Next.
I can think of worse places to be stuck.
That is true. Hiva Oa is this little thing. A little island. I forget how long it is, but it's not very darn big. I think it's about 5 miles by 10, something like that. And there's nobody there, of course. But one of the interesting things to me was that there's a paved road all the way just about around the island and across the island. It's all concrete. And I mean, that's a lot of concrete per capita. And it's a nice little road. Nobody on it. You could take a nap in the middle of the road, and nobody would ever run over you. I don't think so. Anyway, that gives you some idea of where things are. One of the interesting, the scenery is spectacular, but it's spectacular every place over there. For those artistes among you, you will find that Paul Gauguin is there, has a museum. Well, he's not there. Yeah, I guess he is still there. He died in 1903. So he'd been there quite a while. Jacques Brel, who was a big singer, the most popular singer in Europe in the 60s, is also buried there. They came and liked it and stayed. And I'll tell you what, there isn't anything there other than this one little town, which we'll get to in a minute. Next. French is a language, but you know, you gotta get by, and most of the tourists, well, about half the tourists are from France, the other half are either from the U.S. or Japan, and so if you speak English, you'll make it, I guess. They want your money. Next slide. Oh, Rody. Did it. There we go. And of course, all these tourists, when the tourists think of Bora Bora or Tahiti or Moorea as the places to go. And let me tell you true, we went on a tour of Moorea, and we saw the most spectacular hotel in the world. I believe that at the time it was the #1 hotel in the world for probably for price. I don't know, but it was certainly spectacular. It was out in the water. It was really nice. So when you think of going there, why you think of all those 3 islands. But of course, there are whole bunches of islands, and everything is spectacular. Next. Okay, I think I covered that. For all you cigar smokers, you can buy Havana cigars there. Next. So when we all met there in Tahiti, we set up on this hill, and even in Tahiti itself, you cannot believe the terrain. I mean to say, but we had our 160 antenna on the pool. It was on a railing around this pool, and I don't know how high up in the air. If you stepped on the other side of the railing, well, you were down there a long way, because it just was practically, it might have been, like 70, 80 degree slope. It was pretty darn steep, but we threw several radials over there and it worked great. We had some very, very good openings on 80 and 160. Of course, the work that Robert described for 10 to 40 worked very well, and we had good pileups. I don't know how many. I mean, I don't know how many folks we worked, but we did not want for activity there, even in the bottom of the sunspot cycle. And of course, that was always true in the Marquesas because it's so rare. Next. That's the pool, and that railing I was talking about is what you see on the right. And I think those bushes that you see on the right-hand side are actually trees that are 30 or 40 feet tall. The 160 was lashed to that railing, and the 10 through 40 was off to the left, and it was tied to a palm tree. I think it was right next to the palm tree. But anyway, it worked great. And the other thing was that was this place where the runway was right off the end of the down the hill? I think it was.
Airport?
Yeah.
No. That was back
where we had
probably-
lunch with that fella. Okay. Well, at any rate,
we're down the road a piece from that.
yes, and so this roughing it in Tahiti is apt. It was really tough. Next. Next, there we go. That's the vertical. Oh, I guess it wasn't tied to that. It was, but it played very, very well. I never had a moment's problem with that. Next slide.
I really enjoyed that soda beans fiberglass pole. That's a good little thing. It folds down to about 2.5 feet and expands out to 33. So very useful. I'll speak to this slide if you like, Madison. You good?
Yeah, go.
We were Bob Alton was corresponding with some of the folks from the VP6R crew, Craig and CT and others, and as it turned out, they were connecting through Tahiti. So we swapped a couple of messages and managed to have dinner with them. and great group of folks. Enjoyed talking with them a lot, and learned a good bit about their experiences. Good time.
And of course, it goes without saying, they were all very eager to meet with us as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's our crew. The fellow next to Robert there, between Bill Priakis and Robert, is Bob Feldman. He was there for, he was on in the Marquesas for, I think, only 2 days. Anyway, he joined us. He's a cardiac, a thoracic surgeon out of Dallas, and he had to get back to his people who would otherwise be dying. Anyway, that's us, and it's a good crew, and we'll probably go someplace again. Next. So that's how you get there, and on that little plane, and I guess they're very reliable. At least it got us there and back, and got us down to the Australs a couple, 3 times. They're nice. They're kind of Spartan, but they toot along pretty well. I forget how long the flight was from Oa, but it seems to me like it was about 3 hours or maybe a little longer. But it gets along pretty. Yeah, go ahead, Robert. How long?
Yeah, about 3 hours and a comfortable flight. But they, the challenge with going to a place like the Marquesas or the Australs is getting all your gear into this little plane. They offer a cargo service, but they're not accustomed to, oversized bags with a required delivery date. They'll take oversized bags, but on a space available basis, or they'll take standard sized bags and guarantee you a delivery date. So that was our biggest challenge, was just size gear, some antenna poles, and things like that there in time for us. We also looked into the possibility of sending some things by boat, and we DDA had there before and left a few things in storage, and was able to arrange for some really pretty inexpensive transport from Tahiti to Hiva Oa. It took about a month to get there, but he arranged it well in advance. The trickier part for us was trying to get things by boat from the U.S. to Tahiti. It just proved too complicated. We thought, surely we can send it to a freight forwarder in Los Angeles. They can throw it all on one pallet, wrap it all together, throw it on a boat. We'll give them 6 months. We don't care when it gets there. Just before we do, it was much more complicated than that. No one wanted to accept all of our pieces and parts coming from 4 or 5 different locations and assemble it for us. So we ended up taking it all as checked baggage, and then almost all of it as checked baggage again on these ATR planes.
Let me add this about the airport. I think this is the Hiva Oa airport. And if it is, it's the only flat spot on the island. And actually, and I'm not making this up. The island itself has more hills than Carter had pills, and you can see kind of a gentle slope off to the left there, off the nose of that airplane. The reason it looks so gentle is because it's at an angle. But fortunately, that cut through the island right in the middle is north to south. Our operation place was on the south side of the island, not the north side. There used to be a place on the north side, but the Carpenter ants got it. VE7KW, who had been operated on the north side some years ago, said when he was there, it was the Carpenter ants had had a pretty good start on it. He didn't think it was going to last much longer. And to that effect, we went up to the north side of the island. And I believe I think there's one settlement that has 3 houses in it, or maybe 4, and that's it. That's where the concrete batch plant is, by the way. But I mean, to tell you, there's hardly anything that's horizontal on there that wasn't made by humans. God decided that horizontal wasn't to be on Hiva Oa Island. Maybe the others are better, but that one's bad. Next. Okay, here we are. And that says it all. We reached your destination. That's a little thing right next to the only store in the island. And we'll have some pictures of the store in a minute, but that's pretty darn apt as far as we were concerned. I misspoke. That road looks kind of flat, but beyond that person that you can see in the background, it starts going up. Next. Okay. Those orange things are the problem. I don't remember how much that we have paid in excess baggage, but the interesting thing about before I get to that, let me say something about Air Tahiti and Air Tahiti Nui. They're not the same airline. They don't recognize each other. There's no interline agreement. There's no nothing, even though the names are almost the same. Air Tahiti Nui flies from Los Angeles and perhaps other places to Papeete with Boeing 767s. And the biggest thing that Air Tahiti has itself barely will accommodate all those golf bags and all that other kind of stuff. This wasn't all of our stuff by a long shot. We tried to travel as light as we could, but we still had, oh gosh, I don't know, close to probably 1,000 pounds worth of gear. But those big orange bags, they're great. They will hold a hex beam and a 60-foot spider pole. In fact, I think they'll hold 2 60-foot spider poles. We had lots of spider poles, which make great antennas, especially if you're working off of salt water, which we were not, but we could see it at least from where we were. Okay, what's next, Roby?
Okay, you're at slide 20 just for your timing.
Okay, that's where we stayed, right there. Not in that. Actually, the accommodations were quite nice. We have some pictures of the cabanas that we had, but there was a main building that had an adjunct room, which was where we operated, and we have plenty of pictures of that. That's the name of the place. Next. Okay, that place has 4 cabins. Atuana is the name of that town, of how many of our folks it had. And I can't remember how much it cost us, but it was cheap. Like, what did we pay, Robert? You remember? On a per
significantly under $100 per day, meals included.
And we got the use of the place and all the electricity. We had to buy our own wine, but we'll get to that in a minute. And after it was all over and done with, we decided we had such a good time and it was so cheap, we gave some extra money to the place. It really was cheap. But that's the place with the D-Expeditions. And of course, having a Frenchman there helped. The hostess of the whole place, whose name was Tanya, and we'll get some pictures of her in a bit, spoke enough English to make it work. She was a wonderful, wonderful chef, but having a French national there is the only way to go. If you, I've always tried to find a ham on the ground. Well, Didier spends about half of his year in Polynesia, one place or another, and without him, life would not have been nearly as good as it was.
One of the things that he did for us was negotiate the use of some public land that was up on top of the hill just above where we were staying, and he got the city or the state or somebody, the military, somebody, to go do a little bit of bushwhacking for us. But Didier and a friend went through and hacked a path for some coax and for our 80-meter antenna. But that really helped. It get our 80-meter antenna well up above where we were operating it up, gave us a good spot for the 160, and we had one of our big hex beams up there too. So that really made it possible to operate the 3 stations that we had, having that extra space.
And another thing, because of the way things were there physically on the ground, I can't remember how much coax we took, but it was pretty darn close to 3,000 feet, and we used it all.
Yep.
Things are a long way away. Okay, what's next? There's Tanya and her son, and I'll tell you what, I can't remember. I think he takes a 2X. I think he can squeeze into a 2X t-shirt. I think I chose 4 for her, but I guess she samples the cooking. But at any rate, she sure knows how. Next. Obviously, being that part of the world, there are flowers every place, and you're looking at about the last 150 feet of flat ground. And that, by the way, is flat because somebody took a shovel or a bulldozer or something to it. What you see that drops off into this right there is actually the end of it. And that's probably a 30-degree slope that you can't see beyond it. I mean, things are steep there. What's next? Okay, there's our closest water. And those little rowboat things down in the harbor are actually yachts, and they're pretty fancy. We did get a steamer in there. I guess it comes in about once every 2 weeks or something to drop off supplies. You can get a lot of fruit there, but okay, next.
But regarding that last slide, there's quite a few people who live on these yachts, and I called it the French Polynesian RV park. Essentially, these people, pick an island and come around, and find another place to go, and then stay a week or 2 there, and then cruise to another island, etc. So they're not all fancy. Some of them are, but anyway, very interesting lifestyle.
Okay, this is a room. This is a room that had 2 of these beds or 3. Was this your room, Robert? I don't remember. I don't think.
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, anyway, they had a mosquito net over there. There is no malaria on this island, which is pretty surprising. There's malaria all through the Central Pacific, but not here. Anyway, it's very comfortable. No air con. That fan up there in the upper part is it. To the right is a porch, which we'll see in the next slide. Here it is, and this wasn't yours because that porch looks out on the harbor. But anyway, the breeze through there was very good. It was very, very comfortable, never too hot. Next. Okay, as you can see, we ate well and we drank well, and it was great. The only problem was that it wasn't a problem for us, but it was a problem for y'all because we're and and not working everybody. And there were plenty of people to work, obviously.
Well, if you count the heads at this table, you'll see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 operators. So that means we've got 2 guys at the radio. We tried to keep at least a couple of radios going at dinner time.
Next. Okay, Robert, you can talk about the antennas.
Okay. So let's see. We had 3 hex beams. These first things look like hex beams. One of them, this first one, was huge. Oh my gosh, it included a 40-meter element. And I'm sure most of you have seen the through 20-meter hex beams. They're great, really popular, easy to put up, not too heavy. But this one included 40 meters, and it was a beast. It was a challenge to put it up, and in the end, we decided that there are better ways to do 40 meters. But that's what we had all up at the top of the hill, and we used it mostly for 17 meters. But we used it for 10 as well. Tried it on 15 one afternoon with success, etc. We had a standard K4 hex beam that did 10 through 20. It was our 20-meter antenna for the most part. We homebrewed Keith, VE7KW, homebrewed a Moxon for us that looked for all the world like a hex beam that worked on 15 and 30 meters. That was a great antenna. But I have to say the star of the show was this 2-element 40-meter vertical array that DDA put together. It's designed by W4RNL CBIC, and it was just fantastic. It was we could point it northeast or southwest. Northeast was best for U.S. and southwest, long path, was best for Europe. And it really did have quite a bit of directivity. When we would turn to the southwest, stopped calling. They couldn't hear us anymore. So, and while the Europeans were not loud, they were there, and they were there consistently. 40 was one of our very best bands for Europe. Another one of our really good antennas was the 2-element 80-meter wire beam, also built by Keith. There's a really nice design in the June 2018 QST, and that article gives dimensions for 20 and 40. But Keith sized it up for 8 meters, tested it, and tied it up at the top of a tall tree at the top of our biggest hill. And it really played well. We made quite a few European contacts with it. The time that I spent on 80, I felt like it was better for Europe almost than for the U.S. U.S. signals were not huge, but they were there, and so was Europe. The 160 antenna was I think our basic idea was a great one. It's the classic DXpedition design. You take a 60-foot spider pole, and you run a wire up at as high as it'll go, and then you run an L off to one side, or maybe a T-top. Do some elevated radials, and you make a lot of contacts. For whatever reason, we just got a lot of folks who said, we can't hear you, we can't hear you, we can't hear you. So we checked it, we tinkered with it, and I think there's a little bit more on the subsequent slides we'll talk about. Next slide. This is the big hex beam. You can see a couple of the guys back here. There was always a little bit of wind up on the top of this hill, and believe it or not, the first few days we had it at this elevation, just about 5 feet off the ground. With the big hill sloping off to the foreground, the effective height is much greater, but it wasn't quite what we thought it would be. We managed to get up another 5 feet or so, but it was just really unwieldy. This is not a DXpedition antenna. That's what we decided. Unless you've got some really good kind of support that you can put it on, it's just a bit too big. Next slide. Here's the classic hex beam, the K4KIO. It just went up in a snap and worked great. No complaints at all here. Next slide. This is the Moxon that's on the ground here, the 15 and 30 meter. You can see the dimensions. 30 meters makes it pretty big, but it worked very well. Next slide.
This gives you some idea of what the terrain is. You see how small those people are. We were standing, whoever took the picture was standing on at the side of the house. And man, that's down there a long way. It's so steep you can't walk up it.
Yeah, they have a road that you can see it. It's kind of follows an S pattern down to the harbor. Next slide. Here's that 2-element 40-meter vertical. Doesn't look like much, but these are 12-meter spider poles. There's a switching mechanism and some phasing lines that do all the magic. Next slide. This is the 160 inverted L. We started out with it as an inverted L. We later converted it to a T-top, although that meant that our T-top pieces had to kind of come down pretty sharp. We had 2 elevated radials, one which ran to the west, to the left side off this picture across a road, and another one that ran back toward the shack. You know, everything looked good on the analyzer, but I have a theory that our conditions were not especially great on the low bands, and this was not an ideal placement. We had our best night on 160 was one night after we didn't make any changes to the antennas. The previous night we'd made, say, 50 QSOs. The following night, with no changes, we made 150, and everybody was happy. So, you know, the magic band, the top band, excuse me, is a little fickle at times. Next slide. I'll finish with this one, Madison. I think this is the last bit about the antennas. You know, you think about field day, you put everything up, and then you go eat barbecue and you talk on the radio. That wasn't our experience. We were out there every day tinkering with some antenna or other. Not that they didn't work, but one, you know, a little piece broke here. We tried to improve the 160. We put up a 17-meter vertical dipole to see what was going on. We put up 2 different receive antennas, and then we helped Didier put up a 20-meter vertical array that he used after we left for a while. So there was always somebody out there sweating in the sun while others were at the radios. Next slide.
Okay.
Here comes the food porn.
Yeah, this is pineapple, local pineapple. It's really good. But this is not the first nor the last food thing you will see. Next. I got to hand it to Robert on this one. He was the person who decided that what we needed were 3 stations on all the time. So he set up the 3 stations on a daytime, a nighttime, and who knows when time. Each one had all of those. So we didn't get skunked very often, but there were some problems, and the propagation gods were sometimes very good and other times not worth a hoot. For example, one night, I think it was, well, I don't remember which night it was, but anyway, K4UEE and W5SJ and I were on those 3 stations on 40, 80, and 160. And we came on at 2 in the morning, I think 2 to 5 in the morning, the 3 of us, or maybe it was at Z time. I can't recall. At any rate, we were all 3 on all the time, and we made 1 QSO between us, 1. So it wasn't a very productive evening, but at any rate, the rest of the time it was wonderful. And if you're ever going to go any place with more than 1 station, I certainly suggest that you consider setting them up differently, because we can all operate at all times, and it really worked very, very well. Next. Okay, here, I don't remember which number this is, but that's Robert and Bob Feltman working on one of the stations. The other station is off. You can see it with that yellow thing on top of the amplifier there. And the last one was behind the other window. So they were all separated. And even if we were working sideband, which we did some, there really wasn't a problem. And I will say this, we would start out when we change bands, we would start out that band on sideband, and we'd work it until it quit, which was usually pretty darn quickly. Then we would go to CW, and that would stay on longer. In fact, is quite a bit. And when it quit, then we'd go to FT8. And FT8, which some of us knew about and others really didn't. I don't know that I'd ever made an FT8 contact before that. Works so well. Of course, we're pumping it with 400 or 500 watts, so that helps. But it gets through. It does get through. That I'll say. Next. Here's a different cast of characters. That's Neil, VA7DX, looking at you, and Didier. And then Robert, you can see in the back, I recognize his red shirt, which says Astros. Of course, that was before the Astrogate. So I don't know. You still have that, Robert? I don't know if you do or not.
I do, in fact.
He and I are both Astros fans, so we're apologizing for nothing. So don't even try. Next. More food. I mean, I don't even know what this stuff is, but the presentation is marvelous. The food is great. I think this is some sort of, I can tell it's a fresh tuna, I think. But anyway, there's rice and tuna seem to be the staples, but somehow they always came up with vegetables too for us. Next.
We were fortunate. If you're a vegetarian, the Marquesas are where a lot of the vegetables and fruits for French Polynesia come from. So what came in on the supply boats were, chicken and beef and things like that. And they picked up a lot of fruits and vegetables. So we had salad from time to time and plenty of veggies.
If he can give it the death stare, why, that means he could get the rate up there. Well, I want to comment also in the background. You can see flags from several different places. Thanks very much to TDXS for a very generous contribution, but we also received a lot of contributions from lots of places. Those 2 out of those 3 are from Europe, and we had other European groups giving us money, and DEXA did, and we just had ever so many people that supported us, which is good, because going on one of these things is not cheap. I forget how much it costs, but it's not cheap. Next. Okay, now this is Robert's doing, but I'm going to say so because his view of this and mine are different. Robert hired K6TU to come up with some propagation charts. And so there were 2 types. There, this type and the one on the next slide too. Let's see that one too. And the red is, of course, the best, and the blanks are the worst. And in my humble opinion, they weren't even close. Robert is not quite such a harsh critic, but if it's red, they ought to be booming in. We get into try to work supposedly on 30 meters at 9 p.m. Man, there you couldn't get a peep out of much of anybody. the nice part about that was that while we worked a lot of JAs, and you always do, they were not overwhelming as they often are in the Pacific. You know, they'll be quiet and annoyingly so when you blow a call, but Robert, you can comment on this because your take is different from mine.
Yeah, can we go back to the previous slide for a second? So K6TU provides a service, and you can subscribe to it. It's a modest fee, and he will basically run VOA cap predictions for you and produce maps like this for your DXpedition, if you like, and if you want these for your home station, that's a lot of what he does. And we use these. We used his service for the Australs in 2018 as well, and we used them last year for the Marquesas. And what he presented us with were 24 slides for every band, every hour. So this is 20 meters at 06 UTC. So we got a set of 24 slides for 20 meters. And it was cool to kind of page through the slides, and kind of like those old things where you kind of flip through a deck of cards kind of things, and it looks like a moving picture. You can see the propagation kind of move across the different continents. And in the Australs, we thought that those propagation predictions were fantastic. They were magical. They said the band would open at this time, and it did. They said it would open to Europe at this time, and it did. It was really reliable. I have to say this time, either because our assumptions about our terrain were different, or because the flux was not the average of what was assumed by the propagation predictions, everything was down. It still followed the same patterns. 17 opened at about the same time that the charts suggested, but the signals just weren't as strong. And if we can go to the next slide. And all of these high band openings that you see on the left side of the chart, 10 and 12, were much, much, much more limited than they show here. We had very limited openings on 10, not much on 12. 15 was fair. 17, 20, 30, and 40 were the money bands. But we tried to capture a lot of information in this chart. It just wasn't really doable to have 24 times 8 charts at every station. So I came up with a way to kind of put it together in one little sheet here. And as Madison said, the red indicates that should be red hot, good signals, etc. The continents shown in each of the cells as to what you should expect to work. When there's bold type and a ring around it, that's when you should expect to work Europe. We've tagged the sunset time. We've got local and UTC time on here. So a lot of information working here on this chart, and we definitely referred to it a lot, but signals were certainly down from what were predicted here. Next slide. Yeah, here's just the bottom of the chart, and you can see our logo. We were expecting in red here signals that were S8 plus. I don't know if our S meter ever went above about S6. So signals were not that strong. Next slide. There he is. Take it away, Madison.
Okay. It just so happens that on this particular slide, I am working FT8 or FT4 or something, or one of those digital modes. And this was a record breaker for me, because not only did I work sideband, but I also worked the digital modes. And my comment at the time to somebody was that I have no shame because now I've worked all three modes. And there I did. Okay, next. Let's see, that's Bill Kriakis doing something. Bob Alphin's sitting there and I'm about ready to go down and get some sleep, I guess. Next.
It might look like they're thinking about who's on the radio, but that's what they're thinking about. They're thinking about what's for dinner.
Hey, that's right. That is correct. And it was good stuff. I mean, here, I don't even know what it is left. What were they? Those are turnips or something rather? Gee whiz. I mean, this lady knows how to put together a meal. She really did. Not only
Yeah.
did they taste good, but they would knock your socks off visually. They were wonderful.
And even if you didn't think you like raw fish, after this trip with fresh fish right off the boat, you'd eat it raw and you would love it. It was great. That's a big staple there.
Next. Okay, well, there's Dr. Bob having a good time, keeping the sun off his head. Next. Whoops. And we had she could make a dessert too. We had what, ice cream nearly every time, didn't we, Robert? I don't remember.
Oh my gosh, she had something. These are profiteroles, these pastries filled with cream and topped with ice cream. Holy cow! After a big full entree, she did not let us go hungry at all. Next.
Okay, there's Didier wondering about something. Yeah.
I wonder what
the
he's
next one.
about.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Oh, I want to make a comment on this one. You can see off to the left there, there's the backside of another computer. That was not a station, but I don't even know what to call it, except that we were connected to the internet and we shamelessly spotted whoever was not doing anything up would shamelessly spot us wherever it was. I suppose it helped, but we always say, TX7T on 12 meters or whatever band Didier was on there at the time. It seemed to generate a little enthusiasm, and we did it a lot. Next.
Yeah, we used that computer to upload logs and whatnot. So Didier might have been thinking about short path or long path, but really he was probably thinking about Burgundy or Bordeaux. Not only is Didier a really good cook and a fine operator and antenna guy, but he teaches wine classes in France. And if you're going to teach wine classes in France, you better know your stuff. So he kept us well refreshed. Next slide. There's
Okay,
Keith.
Keith, he's the kind of guy that can take a bobby pin and a piece of gum and turn it into a transceiver with 100 watts. I don't know how he does it, but he does. He is a real magician when it comes to setting up things. He can set up anything and make it work, whereas others are not quite so gifted.
And we have to credit Keith not only for adapting a couple of great antenna designs to work for us, but also for figuring out where to put these antennas so that we wouldn't have interstation interference. And I have to say we had almost none. We had bandpass filters and we used them consistently, but some of the antennas were quite close together, and Keith had thought it all through and looked at some maps and drawings that Didier had put together from his previous visit there, and it really worked well.
Okay, next.
Here's what Keith was really thinking about. This was carpaccio. Yum.
It's fish and grapefruit and something or other else. So this is what, for all of those of you who, like me, think that FT8 is for somebody else, why it's different, man. We had lots of activity. That bright red stuff up at the top are people that are loud. And let me see if I can see on this one. You can see on the screen on the left, if you can see it, there are stations that are, the best one I can see is plus 11 and the worst one is minus 24. And yet somehow we could work them. Maybe having 500 watts is pretty good, but I don't know. It works. And you know, I'm a believer. So go ahead. Next.
I'll have a comment if you don't mind backing up about FT8. It was a good mode. There are lots of people who get their license, get on HF, they throw a wire up in a tree, and they may never have made a CW contact. They might have made one SSB contact, but they've made hundreds of FT8 contacts. For them, that's the way it works. So we went out to meet the population by working lots of FT8. In fact, in 2018, we were, after the Baker guys, really the first DXpedition to use FT8 in a big way. So it's an important mode, and you'll see from our statistics how many QSOs we made there. I'm sure everyone on this call has used the DXpedition mode before. In 2018, it was very frustrating because people just had not read the manual on how to make that work. And, you know, people would call us, but we couldn't complete the QSO because there are a couple of things you have to do to make the DXpedition work, the DXpedition mode work. So if you haven't read the document on Fox and Hound, spend a few minutes and tinker around with it sometime before the next big DXpedition comes around, so that you'll be ready. You really need to have your computer control set up to your radio, and you have to be sure to enable the split mode operation. If you don't click a couple of those buttons like that, you won't be able to complete the QSO. You'll hear us call you the first time, and it will be maddening because we won't finish the QSO with you. One thing that we found about FT8 was that the expedition mode worked well for US and Europe. It did not work especially well for Japan. You know, there are a lot of guys who have a buddy pole out on their apartment building balcony in Japan. You know, they have a limited operation, limited number of bands, maybe, I don't know. They don't have a lot of experience. That's my impression anyway. And so they found their frequency, they called us, we heard them, but we couldn't complete a QSO. So what we did instead was, rather than going to the standard FT8 mode, we went to the brand new FT4 mode. It was just out of the box, and none of us had used it. It came out in July. We were there in November. I don't know that there'd been any contests between then and our expedition, but it worked very well to work with Japanese guys. We would work through a big batch of US guys. There'd be a bunch of JA guys we couldn't complete the queue with, so we would announce on our frequency that we were going to FT4 on this frequency, and a lot of them would follow us, and then someone would put us in the packet cluster, and they would find us. One more comment about FT8, and that is that you know, I think everybody in this call at one time or another has turned on the packet cluster and probably used the reverse beacon network too. You know, there are all these automatic listening stations that'll tell you who's on and what's going on in the bands. FT8 operators, for whatever reason, tend not to use that. So if you fire up on a Fox and Hound frequency for your DXpedition, you could be there for quite a while, and you could even spot yourself, and nobody would come. So what we finally decided to do was to go to the standard FT8 frequency of that band, make one QSO, and then put out a broadcast that TX7T, FT, or Fox and Hound, and give our frequency, and then we would have a pilot. So it was necessary to do that. We couldn't just rely on the packet cluster. Next slide.
Okay, this is Bob Alphin doing what Bob Alphin does best. He's a real whip cracker. I traveled with Bob the first time to Lakshadweep's VU7 about whenever that was, about 15 years ago. And the way we did it there was we had 3-hour shifts on and then 3-hour shifts off. And then the 3-hour shift off, you could, before you went on again in 3 hours, you could sleep or eat or do whatever it was. And I came back and I had a case of shingles. I was in such bad shape. We modified it a little bit, even though we had 3-hour shifts on here. He would make it so you had 6 hours off and you could do what you wanted. So I came back in pretty good shape. He was also, you can't see it because he's hiding it with his body, but he would also say on that little whiteboard that's right there, need more sideband, need more Europe, need more something or other. So he was keeping us going, and he did a great job in that respect. We made, as you'll see from the statistics, we made, you know, if we weren't able to work you, then you think it's a failure, but there were a lot of people who were happy over us. Next. Okay, there it is. Those are lobsters, which Didier knocked out. I don't know where he got them, but at any rate, there they are. They were wonderful.
They were fabulous.
Yeah, he's quite a chef. Next. Okay, this is back to what I was talking about initially. It was on the south side of the island. It wasn't on the beach. There was a hill a kilometer and a half behind us that really didn't give us a true north shot. There's a north-south cut through this island, but we worked a lot of long path stuff, so I don't know why, but we did. That's another thing. When we were in the Australs, we worked a lot of long path too, and there was a 500-foot cliff right behind us. I mean, right behind us. Yet we worked long path that way. Don't know how. It's like the antenna. You know, it doesn't matter how you got them in the log. It could be a wet noodle, or it could be a, you know, the greatest array ever. If they're in the log, that's what counts. Next. This is kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at. That's just about almost due north, a little bit to the east of due north from our place. And you really can't get a feel of that terrain, but I'll tell you true, it is steep, and we're a long way from the top. It's a wonder that we made it out. But with you know, we were very pleased with how we were able to work people. Next.
Yeah, this is taken from the harbor down at that you've seen the pictures of, and if you can go back, the cluster of buildings up at the upper right, that's our pension.
Okay, that's how we did right there, and you know, we got 31,000 plus QSOs. And surprisingly, the real money band was 20 meters, not 40 like usual. But we worked into, well, see, it's not on here, the continent split, but as you can see, we were very pleased. We did a lot of digital, and you know, almost 11,000 as to 16,000 CW. So it's there. Next. Okay, that's talking about what Robert was elucidating.
Yeah. One more little comment here. You know, it's possible to work Japan on 160 on FT8, but it's not easy, or it wasn't easy at the time. They had a 5 kilohertz allocation for digital up at 1900 and something. So we scratched our heads about how to go up there and transmit. Eventually, we figured out how to fool the software into letting us operate a very wide split mode, and that worked well. Believe it or not, to work that wide split, you turn the split function off in WSJTX. And we would have loved to do Fox and Hound, but the standard FT8 mode worked best of all.
Another thing about the JAs on 160, I think their allocation was from the bottom of the band up to like 10 or 12 or something like that. So instead of being able to work at about 22.5, 22.5 where we would normally go, we had to have a split working down on them. And we did make some cues, but it's pretty convoluted to do it that way. However, that said, since then, they've joined the rest of the world, and now their 160 allocation is approximately what everybody else is.
Yeah, it's much improved, and that's very recent. So,
yeah. What's next? Okay, that's where it is. Western, well, let's see. A true antipode from Marquesas is like
Ethiopia.
Egypt or Libya or somewhere in there. So we managed to work into Europe 4,000 cues, which is really surprising. I didn't think we'd do that well, but we tried and were successful. So they said it couldn't be done, and we showed that they were not correct. Total 31,000. Okay, anything left on this? I didn't see. What do you got next? Oh, I'll let you do that one, Robert.
Yeah, this is just a day-by-day description of our of the operation. We put one station on the air on November the 7th, made 589 cues. The next day, all of us CW geeks were having a blast, and we ran up some big numbers on CW. We wanted to work 2 full weekends. That was one of the things about scheduling we wanted to do. So you'll see November 11 and 12, and again November 18 and 19. Were weekends. So we did see a spike in the rate then. And then in the middle of the expedition on November 13th, we had a big Monday slump. I mean, our numbers went way down from the previous Sunday. But we did a bunch of digital on that Sunday before, so it's what you want to do. And on this Tuesday, immediately following that, we had great 160 conditions, very poor high bands. We had good SSB. Anyway, it changed throughout the week, but we had good rates throughout. Next slide.
Okay, if you work this, look for Logbook of the World, and if you want a card, go to Tim Beaumont, M0URX. We used expert amps. Thank you, Bob. And we got a lot of support from a lot of different people, and we had all expert amps except one kind of an odd one. I can't remember what it was. Didier came up with it someplace, and was it a Tokyo high power? I don't remember. Maybe it was a French.
No, I'll think of it in a second. It's a Finnish amplifier.
Oh yeah. We had 3 pilots, our usual 3 pilots. We have one from K2SG is actually in Florida, and N7BT is in Washington State, and France, our head pilot, is in Europe. If you ever go anyplace, having a pilot is wonderful. I mean, it's just great. They tell you what you need to know, and so you can work on things, because very often your propagation is not what you think it's going to be. Sometimes there's a skew path, especially out of the Pacific. There's a lot of that. I don't know why, but it is. And so sometimes you have to aim your beam a little differently than you think you're going to. But anyway, that's pretty much it. That's our game. And I think there's one more. Yeah, there's one more slide. So let's take a look at it. There it is. Didier and Bill Priakis, and you know,
Mission accomplished.
that's it. Yeah, there's the harbor in the background. It was a great trip, and thanks very much to TDXS for making the contribution you did.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have questions?
Yes. What was the power there, Madison? Was it 120 or 240 or what?
Oh gosh, I don't. It was probably
It was 220, 220 volt European style French plugs.
yeah. There were. This is. Well, we did have a 200. We did have a 220 volt soldering iron, but we really didn't need it. You know, most of the places we go, solder and soldering iron are a big deal. But I can't remember we might have plugged it in, but it was mostly as expected.
So I have a question, Robert, about your antenna. You had your vertical array. What kind of radials or what sort of counterpoise or radials did you use for that vertical array? It's like he's gone. Other questions?
Wait a minute, I can answer that.
Okay.
Well, go ahead, Robert. Oh, Robert.
He kind of disappeared for some reason.
Well, anyway, we did not have a big radial field. I think we had, for our verticals, we only had two for each, and soil is non-existent. Well, there's a little more soil, but it's kind of like West Texas, you know, it's mostly rock and a little scrub down there. So unfortunately, everything was up in the air. You can see, I don't know how far down that harbor is, but I'm guessing it's probably 200 or 300 feet below us,
Yeah.
and then everything else was another 100 feet or more above us.
Okay.
It was a challenge when choosing a place to stay. You know, you got to balance like the logistics of, you know, we need a place to accommodate 8 people. We need meals. We need electricity. We need, you know, certain things. Versus, we want the. So if I could do it again, and if I could figure out how to contact some of the people on the north side of the island, I'd say, yeah, let's try to figure out how to do that. But you might end up with a fishing pole out in the ocean for some evening for your dinner, and I don't know. We didn't want to go that way. So.
That's part of our criteria for going places. You got to be able to get there easily, and got to have.
That's right. One other thing, that amplifier that Didier brought was a Juma, Juma, and it will do 1,000 watts. And they say you really shouldn't use it on digital modes, and I don't think we ever did, but it did all right. It's very lightweight, very, very lightweight. Probably half the weight of an Expert 1.3. So. Didier had it blow up once, but not on our trip. Anyway, okay.
Robert, I'd love to see an article about your antenna in the pull sheet.
Say that again.
I'd love to see an article about your vertical trap dipole in the pull sheet.
Oh yeah. You know, I basically looked in the ARRL handbook and found a trap dipole plan, and built half of it, and used some RG58 coax, and it worked okay. The 20 meter coax trap got a little too hot, but I realized that that's because I wound the one end of it was just the contacts were a little closer than they should have been, so it got a little warm. But for the most part, it worked all right. Anyway, I don't have any magic to it, but we patched it up, and I used it on Fakarava with 100 watts, and it worked great. So if you want to run high power, you got to pay a lot of attention to those traps. but at 100 watts, it's not hard.
I have a question. I'm not much in the way of money, but I was wondering how much does it cost an individual to do something like this? Not counting any bonuses given by clubs and hardware donated and so on. In other words, what was your outlay?
You know, we all paid for our flight to Tahiti, and it was four figures, low four figures. I think I paid $1,200. I think that was probably about average. The flight from Tahiti to the Marquesas was also about $1,000, including 100 pounds of luggage allowance. You know, if you divide it across each of us probably paid a couple of $100 each in additional baggage to get some nice hex beams and poles and coax and whatnot there. And as Madison said, we spent, you know, let's call it $100 a day, you know, for on-site, you know, lodging and meals. And that to me, for French Polynesia, is the great little secret there. You know, it's not cheap to get there. It's an 8-hour flight, so you're going to pay for that. But once you're there, it's not expensive. It's like going to a small town, B&B. You know, they're happy to see you. They'll, you know, there are not a lot of well-heeled tourists at the places that we want to go to, so they'll let you run your antennas, and so, you know, it was certainly under $5,000 a piece, probably well under that by the time we got some nice club donations.
I'm not so sure I agree with that, Robert. I think by the time, you know, Gerald, what you have to do is figure, well, don't be shy about asking somebody, can I borrow this? And this could be
Amen.
very, very expensive. You know, Robert's right in terms of money out of the pocket. This one's probably $5,000. But if you figure in, you know, you've got some little radio, something or other. Go to ICOM, go to somebody or other. If you want, I mean, gosh, let's, the coax that we had from Messi and Poliani, I think is what the name of it is, some Italian stuff, and that stuff was like $2 a foot. And we had 3,000 feet of it, but we got it from them via DX Engineering. And it was wonderful. It was a super low loss stuff. And they said, you know, you can have it, but you do it. And you know, we get all kinds of stuff for free because they like the advertising. We put up a website, as we always do. I don't remember how many hits we got on the thing.
We do. There was a lot of very nice vendor support. And one of the main reasons that, in my opinion, you really want to go for that vendor support is so that you can have consistent stations. You know, Madison may not have used an ICOM before. I may not have used a Kenwood before. You know, the next guy may not have used an Elecraft before. So you want to have the same stations.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Well, thank you guys. I certainly appreciate it. It's a good job. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone else did too. Are there any other things that we need to discuss before we adjourn?
Roby, did you record this session? Will it be up on the website?
I believe I did. I didn't think to start it till their presentation started though, but I got the good part. So I will transmit that in the same fashion we did the other session after our process.
I'd like to remind everyone about the field day meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. and Roby and whoever, maybe you could post the link on the TDXS reflector again for the
It's-
field day meeting.
It's Saturday.
Sorry. Oh,
Thursday.
all right. Okay, Saturday.
Will
So
do. We'll get it posted.
let's post it again, and I'll try to get it posted on the BVARC reflector as well.
Okay. Very good.
I had a comment for Gerald.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Gerald, tell the new member if he goes to the TDXS website on the home page, on the left, there is a link for reflector. And if he clicks on that, he can fill out the information and set his password, and then he'll get all the communication off the reflector.
Okay. I talked to him today. I didn't talk to him. I emailed him today. He was curious about, he's got a friend who wants to join and he couldn't find the membership application. And I told him all he had to do was go down to the sixth line on the bottom on the left-hand side and go into the Constitution, and then the application is actually attached to the Constitution. And he said, well, why don't you just have a membership page? I said, well, that's a good question, and I'll bring it up to the people that run the web and see what they can do and what the president wants to do. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Good.
And it's really good to see Steve again. I haven't seen Steve in a while.
Yeah, you missed the barbecue when I was down there.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, it might be a long time. We sold our place on Lake Livingston, so I probably won't be down for a long time.
When were you down here?
Okay, guys.
I was
we're adjourned, but you're welcome to stay if you want and chit chat for a little while. I'll leave this thing up and commiserate just like we would if we were leaving the center or whatever. So appreciate your attendance and thank you.
I want to say something. First of all, thanks for having us. It was fun. Gerald, did you leave there? I can't see that you are. I was supposed to give a talk on June the something or other at Hamcom about how you can do this all by yourself. So all I can say is wait till next year when I'll do it again. You know, the hard part about these things is figuring out how you can put it all together. This one came together pretty well, even though we had a lot of trouble figuring out how we were going to work all those people from the south side of the island. The year before, we started out and we were supposed to go to American Samoa. And by the time we finally ended up in the Australs again, that was our 9th choice. There's always some problems. So don't think, even though I say, you know, all you got to do is throw some stuff in a golf bag and have at it. It isn't quite that easy because you find out that you can't get there, or that it's all been shut down. You have to be a citizen or something. I mean, I've got a lot of places that I'd like to go that I can't get to for one reason or other. You know, you think of North Korea as being off limits. Well, there are a lot of places that are off limits. I did manage to get to Myanmar in 2016. And there, the only reason I did it is because Zorro, who is the team leader, is an emissary of the Japanese government and was invited. Long memories, Myanmar, Burma, was under martial law for 40 years. And they only stopped being under martial law within the last 6 or 7 years, everybody looks over their shoulder because they think if they do something wrong, somebody with a gun is going to ask them to shoot them. And I am not making this up. It is a strange, strange country. You know, there are lots of places that are like that.
Madison,
Yeah, Doug.
did you have any customs problems? Custom.
No, not this time. Although when we went to Tonga, we sure did there, because the guy that had the key to the customs house was, I don't know, he was in New Zealand or someplace. We we're going to be back for a few days, so we couldn't get our stuff out. And finally we made some money. Dale, maybe you remember what that thing was on. I don't remember, but we had a heck of a time getting our stuff unburdened from the customs there. Normally not. This time, this is probably not an unusual time. Going to any French possession, you have to declare your stuff, and yet when you come through, you just come on through, and nobody checks anything. I will say this on Myanmar, that was one where you had to, of course, have it all. Even Zorro had to have an inventory and all that stuff, and we couldn't, even though we had a license, we couldn't operate because we didn't have operating permission. That you had to check our equipment first. So here come these two guys with clipboards, and they start going through all this stuff. And then when it all got to be, they had a very official look about it, and we knew we were in big trouble, because they said, well, what's that box over there? It turned out it was an MFJ tuner. And they said, well, it's not on the inventory. So at that point, I decided discretion was the better part of valor. I departed for my own accommodation because I wanted to be able to contact the embassy in case everybody else ended up in jail. But most of the time, there's not a problem. Just go.
I'll say that the DDA was able to find us a person in Tahiti who was a friend of our hotelier in the Marquesas, and she greased a lot of wheels for us. It was fantastic. She was the one who arranged to take those spider poles that were in storage and coax in Tahiti and get it delivered to the Marquesas. She was the one who arranged for someone to pick us up and drop us off at our hotel, and pick us up and get us to the airport again. She also went down and had a nice long conversation with the folks at the airport. They knew we were coming. They knew what our bags were going to look like. And they all but ushered us to the front of the line saying, go ahead. We know you have oversized bags. We're all ready for you. So if you have any opportunity to arrange for something on a trip like that, it's worth gold. So.
Well, I see Earl down there. Earl and I had an experience once going into Mexico, and Earl, maybe you can remember this one. When we crossed across, they had a fellow that hit a button, and the button either turned on a red light or a green light, and so Earl was driving, and they hit the button and it came out as red. And I said, Earl, I said, you're looking at it like you don't remember this. You're probably lucky. I said, Earl, that was a red light. And he says, oh, not to worry. We're going to go through town. So we made a left turn, and here we go rocketing down this street. And I said, I can see some blue lights behind us. And I think they want us to stop. So the cops were driving on the sidewalk trying to catch us, and they finally did. I think we gave them some beer, and that was the end of it. But most of the time when you do stuff like that, you end up in jail. But anyway, it's all part of the adventure.
I was younger.
I remember that red button.
Oh boy.
I pushed it many times.
Well, you know what I'm talking about, but you're supposed to stop. And fortunately, we did have beer. I think that was for RP. We were taking beer down there for Hans and RP. So I can't remember whether we gave it to him or I don't know. I don't know. But anyway,
Good job, Madison.
hey, thanks. I owed all. Hey, and let me say this: that entire slide presentation was put together by Robert, not by me. I didn't have a thing to do with it except I sent it off to Roby, so we had it. He deserves all the credit for those putting it together. Thank you, Robert.
Well, obviously, Robert's the brains of the operation anyway.
Thank you all, guys.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Good
Thanks,
night, all.
Madison. Say hi to Millie for us.
I will.
Robert, did I send you some audio files that I'd clipped of TX7T?
Oh, cool. Yeah. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
that'd be great. We'll stick them in there for next time.
Yeah, I'll see if I can dig those up.
Yeah, we want to hear all of our call signs being worked.
That's right.
I was never quite Johnny on the spot with that. The recording may have my call in, but most likely it was right after mine. I'd work them and then I'd go, oh crap, and I'd hit the start key.
I prefer LOTW.
Yeah, I did work some of you all, but I don't remember who all that I did. I know I did though. I think it's all on Club Log, and so if you check on your green arrow or yellow arrow or whatever it is, well, you'll see who it was.
Oh,
I worked y'all 8 times. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah,
Two bands in one mode.
yeah, I recognize that. I know I worked you, Al.
You were that one station we got on 6 meters, right?
That would be nice. I'd like that. Not too
Thanks,
late,
Dave.
is it?
Oh, and Scott, K5DD, I'm going to send you some cards. I hope you're still doing those things.
Great presentation, Madison.
Thank you, man.
Hey, it's good to see y'all. I'm going to check out.
All right. Likewise. Take care, guys. Enjoyed it.
All right, Steve, good to see you.
Take it easy, Cam. See you.
73, everybody.
Okay, so long.
Great presentation. Enjoyed it. And if I was coming to the at home, so hey, I really enjoyed this one. Y'all take care. Be safe.
Okay, then. See you next time.
Good job, Robert and Madison.
Thanks.
Good night, all.
Hey, see you all on CWTs, I hope. Let's see, I worked Keith the other night, and I actually found Dale one night or one day, so recently. So see you all. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I got
Bye
on
for now.
here Wednesday for the first time. I did the daytime one.